And we are live. I will go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the City Council on April 3rd, 2023. First order of business is invocation and pledge of allegiance. That will be led by Councilmember Gardner.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day that you blessed us with, God. And right now our hearts are on and minds are on those that suffered the tornadoes this past weekend, Father. While we're glad that our specific community was spared, Lord, we know that there are many right next door, our neighbors, that are hurting right now, Father. And while we want to serve, God, we just ask that we can find the courage to serve each and every day and to find a way to help them and just be present in their lives to give them comfort and help them recover, Father. We're so thankful that the loss of life was very minimal here, Father. We're very thankful for that, but there are still people and families who've lost loved ones and that were injured, and we just ask that you be with those families and help us to serve however we can to help them get some comfort and peace and to be able to help recover from this and move on in their life. God, we just ask for wisdom as we do the city's business tonight. We are thankful that we get to live in this community, Lord, and we're thankful for those that serve us each and every day, and even more so during times like this, we see how our first responders and those that serve the municipalities in the area come together to support each other. And we're specifically thankful here in Maumelle of our first responders and how they leapt into action, Lord, to help those in North Little Rock and serve where they could. And we're just so thankful for them, God. And we just ask a blessing on them and their families as they are away right now, helping our communities recover. God, just give us guidance in all that we do. And as we've mentioned, Lord, just help us have the courage to serve each and every day. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Gardner, for the invocation. Obviously not on the agenda is a discussion on the tornado as the agenda went out. We weren't planning on that. What I did want to do is invite first the police chief down and then fire chief to talk a little bit about what their response was. Although the tornado did not hit us, we had first responders very active both leading up to and during the response. Chief Pickard, the floor is yours.
Thank you. As you know, on Friday the 31st, we had an EF3 tornado run through central Arkansas. It had about a 32-mile path, which in fact affected the cities of Little Rock, North Little Rock, Sherwood, and Jacksonville. So at 2:57 is when the last report was that the tornado was on the ground, and by 3 p.m. we had 9 officers headed to Military Road in North Little Rock near Camp Robinson to assist in securing that area. We also had 9 officers, with myself included, that went to Little Rock to their command post to assist. We had received a phone call directly from the chief of Little Rock Police Department asking for our assistance, and I had reached out to the North Little Rock chief, and he had asked for any assistance that we could provide. So we had those 18 going out. By 5 o'clock, we had released the officers from Little Rock because they had plenty of recall with their large department. So we were then able to move those 9 officers out to Jacksonville, and they were extremely thankful and thankful that we showed up. Those officers stayed out there till about 11 p.m. that night, and then the following day, the chief of Jacksonville reached out to myself, the chief of North Little Rock, and the chief at Sherwood, and asked for 9 officers to work overnight to help securing, because they had quite a bit of looting and some other issues going on. We were able to actually provide 4 officers that night, so that was quite awesome that our officers were able to volunteer that time. And I got a kind of a preliminary cost too of what it cost leaving the exempt employees out, such as myself, Captain John Paletti, Captain Ivy, and Captain Sackhoff. We're looking at about $4,600 in overtime that we spent with our officers. There was quite a few hours built up, but that's what we had. And I know that quite a few of the officers didn't volunteer their time on Sunday to go out and help with cleanup efforts. So I'm very proud of my department and the resiliency they've shown. And also let you know that with the weather that possibly the severe weather coming in following this week, Tuesday into Wednesday, we have a plan in place with at least 3 crews ready to be called back should we need them, so.
Thank you, Chief. And just for the council's knowledge, we do believe we'll be able to apply for reimbursement for those additional expenses related to the emergency. So that's why we've been keeping track of it. I had an opportunity to go with Chief Pickard out to the North Little Rock area Friday afternoon and had a lot of good discussions with him and then also with Chief Buford about making sure that we're prepared in those sort of situations. And so thank you to you and your guys and gals for your response there. If there are any questions from the City Council, we can tackle those. If not, I'll go ahead and call Chief Buford up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I had, if it's all right, I had something to hand to the council members. Is that all right?
Please, yes, sir.
So I just made a kind of a timeline of what we did, just so you can see. Plus, I also had to one-up Chief Pickard. Sorry, it's taking a minute. Just as Chief Pickard had said, we also were watching the weather. We get on the regular distro for the weather reports from the National Weather Service in North Little Rock, so constantly get push updates from them, and we're monitoring as well. The hardest thing to do is try to predict where things are gonna go. And talking to the battalion chiefs when we were looking at this, we were trying to make the We're trying to make the decision on whether or not to move fire trucks out of the fire stations. The goal when you're dealing with one of these situations is you don't want the apparatus that you have, the $600,000, the $1 million pieces of apparatus, being stuck in a fire station and then you can't get them out to where they're needed. So we were looking at that right up until the tornadoes touched ground. It looked like everything was heading towards Maumelle and then it turned. So we were making the decision, do we need to move the fire trucks, move them out, and so that we could follow in behind. It's a plan that actually North Little Rock followed. They moved Station 4 and they moved Station 8. They evacuated them out to the eastern part of the city, and then they got behind the tornado, and then they came back in behind it, which is what we were gonna do if that's what was gonna happen. And so when that happened, they were able to circle back around behind the tornado and set up 2 command posts, one at Toltec and one at Budget Transmission on Military MacArthur. And so we were gonna follow that same plan had it actually hit and touched down in Maumelle. But watching the updates and everything else, at about 2:40, North Little Rock called, the fire department called for mutual aid. Their battalion chiefs, I had contact with them through cell phone too, asked them what they wanted, what they needed. Just as luck would have it, North Little Rock was conducting a special operations core class, and they had just finished right as the tornadoes were about to land. So they had already had their recall of their special ops folks there. And we also had, I sent one of the Maumelle firefighters was in that class. And so he was there also, already on ground, already on scene. Once North Little Rock called for mutual aid, we began the process of recalling all of our personnel. We immediately sent Engine 1 over there with a paramedic unit, and we also sent 2 off-duty chiefs. I called them directly on the cell phone and said, do not come to Maumelle, go straight to the command post. Here's where the command post is. I called the command post that they had primarily set up at Military MacArthur and told them what we were sending them, asked them what else they needed. And then as we had, about 3 o'clock, we opened up our own EOC, our little Emergency Operations Center at Fire Station 1. We started tracking personnel, the weather, We started counting what supplies we had, what supplies we needed, and a plan on how we were gonna staff Maumelle, and also what we could give up. Once we completed that, about 3 o'clock, most of the folks that we recalled began coming in, and we put them into RTFs, or Rescue Task Force teams. And then we sent them out in our brush truck as a squad, and then our squad truck as a squad. And part of the RTFs, they reported to the command post, and then they began searching North Little Rock in what we call a hasty rescue search. In that hasty rescue search, you're going to see if you can find anybody trapped. It's not a methodical search. It's you're looking for people trapped. They had approximately 8 to 10 people that were trapped or needed extrication, and we assisted with some of those things right off the bat. Fortunately, there wasn't a great loss of life, but there were people initially trapped in North Little Rock, and our folks did help along with that. But kudos to North Little Rock. They have a very, very well-trained special operations team, and they performed brilliantly, almost flawless. But our teams joined in with their search. We also sent 2 off-duty chiefs to their command post, and I wanted 1 chief with our folks in Maumelle. And so when our teams went out, we had a chief going with our crews to make sure that they had everything that they needed as well. We loaded up extra saw blades, water, anything that we could take to go over there. And then started counting radios as well. About 4:30, between 4:35, I called over to Little Rock Fire, asked them if they needed anything. They had a structure fire that broke out in the middle of all this, and so we sent, and matter of fact, thankfully, the city council allowed us to repair one of the reserve engines. That reserve engine that you allowed us to repair was the primary fire truck that was sent to Little Rock to assist. And they first ran out of Little Rock Central Fire Station, and then they moved to Little Rock Station 4. Had we not fixed that truck, we would not have been able to offer them any aid. So thank you for that. Again, it's already paid dividends for our city partners. We also sent a battalion chief over to Little Rock as well, so we covered where their gaps were. But at the same time, we recalled enough staff here so that if we had anything happen in Maumelle, we would be able to respond. Because we weren't concerned with, at the time, personnel, we actually brought enough back so we could handle 2 things at once. If a structure fire were to happen and we needed to send more people, we could do it. I stayed at the command post and was monitoring everything from our command post. About 9 o'clock on Friday, they started releasing the teams back to the communities. Maumelle was the last one to be released, and then as they came back, we cleaned all of our stuff, put it back into service. And then about a little before 10, the fire truck that we sent to Little Rock also came back. And then again, we put everything back in action. The next day, we sent a message to North Little Rock, if they need anything else, we're here. And we did have quite a few people that also volunteered, not really wearing uniforms, but just door to door to help where they could. My own, just for how important this is to me personally, the community that was hit on Military MacArthur is the community I grew up in. And my mother-in-law lives there, and I still own the house that she lives in, and it was pretty much destroyed. So the people that I grew up with and the people that I lived with for years and years, their houses were destroyed to the left of our house, to the right of our house, across the street to our house. So this weekend, we spent our time over there trying to do what we could, and I'm hoping we get an adjuster to come look at our house. We have a huge tree sitting on our house right now, my mother-in-law's house right now. So I inherited a mother-in-law, too, into my home also. So that's kind of what we did for the fire department. The biggest concern I had was if it was coming to Maumelle, we have to get the fire trucks out. And we have to get them out because as you see what happened on the news to Little Rock Station 9, they weren't able to move those trucks out, and so it collapsed onto, the fire station collapsed onto the trucks. They did get them out eventually, but those 2 trucks were useless, basically. So it is a difficult thing to try to predict where a tornado is going. And so we're looking at every model that you possibly can, try to have a good plan in place, because the plan has always been you have to get behind it. And once it lands, you try to get behind it and then immediately start with your plan. I did have kind of a priority list that I was gonna email or talk to the mayor about, kind of what our priorities would be if something did land, and also was gonna talk to Chief Pickard about that, so we could nest our priorities, and if anybody's interested in that, I can send that out tomorrow.
Thank you, Chief. I have spent a fair amount of time as a city attorney in the police department when emergencies have occurred or been on ride-alongs. It was the first time I had the opportunity to watch you guys in action at the fire department. It was a extremely well-organized machine. I think the department and city is much safer with you at its helm. So thank you to you and your firefighters for coming in. It was interesting watching them coming in all sorts of clothes and just being recalled and as they were staggering in, hitting the door, running to get change and saying, where do you need me, Chief? And watching you assign the different vehicles and keep up with that was really fascinating. I hope to never see it again, though.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Mosley?
I just want to thank both the police chief and the fire chief for giving us the insights on all this. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and it's comforting to know that there's people watching the paths of these things and trying to get prepared. That's really good. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was especially important because when it didn't hit us initially, there's that relief to go, "Phew," and then you worry about other folks. But we had our folks right there responding, trying to get to scenes, trying to clear trees, trying to find a way to get to the destination, which wasn't as easy as you would think, or as I would have thought. So.
Yes, sir. Just if there's kind of a little anecdotal thing, the New York Times called because KETV kept showing the scene, and they kept focusing on Maumelle Fire Department truck. And so they called and said, can you tell us what happened? Why is the Maumelle Fire Department taking the lead and everything else? And I did embellish maybe a little bit. But afterwards, I did direct them to the PIO and North Little Rock Fire, so I didn't want to do that too much. But it was nice to see every time they showed on the news, Maumelle Fire was right there. So.
In that vein, there was Chief Pickard sent me a video from Jacksonville's Facebook Live. I guess they went live at some point to show what was going on, and front and center in Jacksonville was a Maumelle police vehicle, and they're like, and Maumelle PD is here to help too. And so we were like, yes, great press. Council Member Holt, if you could pull the mic down, sir.
Happened to be watching television at a Pickard moment, and they were showing the scene that was at 630 and Military Drive, and that happens to be where my accountant does my taxes and all that kind of stuff is. But they were talking about the other fire truck, and they mentioned that the Maumelle city firemen were there also. So and obviously the announcer was very grateful that the kind of response from outside the city came in to help. So, but I thought it was nice that we were recognized as being out there helping, or
Yes,
you were.
Yes, sir. It's we. Yes, sir.
I take no credit for them.
Well, I do want to say, yes, sir, you do, because had you all not allowed us to fix that fire truck, we wouldn't have anything to send to Little Rock. So you did play a role in it. Yes, sir.
Yes, and if you don't know, if you're ever around first responders in the middle of something like this, they're quick to point out, thank you for what I do have, and boy, it would be really nice if we had this so we could do that. So I felt like there were plenty of plugs from both of the chiefs there, and understandably so. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. You all have received a copy of the March 20th council member minutes. I'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion. If there is none, I'd accept the motion to accept or adopt the minutes, approve the minutes.
Second.
We're going to motion second to approve the minutes for March 20th. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. I don't believe we have any public comment cards, so we will move on to, well, you just heard your department reports, so Planning Commission report, Councilmember Williams?
Yes, sir. Very short, like 28-minute meeting. The points of interest was the First Service Bank site plan review is deferred to the April Planning Commission meeting. And there were 2 variance requests by Chick-fil-A. One for a reduction in their parking. They want to decrease their parking from the minimum requirement of 54 to 51, losing 3 parking spots, because they want a larger canopy that's necessary to continue performing their drive-through service, and their variance was approved. Variance request for also to reduce the setback along the boulevard by 20 feet for the increased canopy, and this will leave 30 feet between the canopy and the property line that's already landscaped and is used as a water detention area. So both of these were approved, and it was a short, quick meeting.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, do you know why the bank situation was deferred?
They didn't say. There was no discussion. They just said it was deferred to the next.
Okay. I'd attended the subcommittee meeting, and it looked like they'd probably get it all worked out, but I guess something didn't get worked out, so. All right, thanks.
Mr. Grummer, do you have an answer for that? You have an answer for everything else, so I assume so.
Scott Grummer, 550 Edgewood. They needed a little bit more time to work out the details for access onto White Oak, which there's some conflict between the engineers who designed the roundabout and the location of that curb cut. So that curb cut was very important for First Security Bank. They wanted to take some time to make sure that everybody's on board before they move forward with the site plan.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Williams. We'll move on to a procedural motion. At this time, I need a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved.
I've got a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, under unfinished business, we have the Park on the River discussion that I believe Councilmember Mosley asked to be re-added. And then in that same topic under new business, there's a resolution also related to Park on the River. But just a general discussion item under unfinished business, Councilmember Mosley.
Yes, sir, thank you. As to where we were the last time, we were going to take a tour of the facility, kind of get some ideas as to what, to refamiliarize ourselves with the facility and see, visit with the park department personnel, learn more about it, see if there's anything that needs to be fixed, that sort of thing. And we did have a good open house. I appreciate Mr. Rayburn's folks being there and giving us a tour, and we learned a lot. I did anyway. I heard some things about how it might not be good for a restaurant because we'd have to make some improvements in the septic system and perhaps some electrical things that need to be fixed or upgraded. I think there was some people that noted a little mold or some kind of fungus on the roof that might need to be repaired, and maybe the fence had some mold on it that goes around. But otherwise, I was very impressed with the state of the facility. It's been a long time since I've been in there, but it's really a marvelous place, marvelous view and all that. And Team Summit, Ms. Timmons was there, and she answered questions and so on. There were a lot of people that came through viewing it to see if they wanted to do a wedding and that sort of thing, meetings and stuff like that. We had a member of the press who did a nice article that's in the back of your packet. So anyway, we got that. I'm closer to thinking about what we need to do with it and that sort of thing. The other thing we talked about was I had asked to see the records. The schedule that had been given to us by Miss Mathis just looked a little light as far as total revenue because mainly because we were supposed to get at least $1,000 a month, and it was falling below that, and then there was nothing there for 2020 and on, and so I'd asked to see the records of the facility and see what we had. I still haven't received all the source documents. I did visit with Ms. Sousa just a minute ago, and she's got a binder of some documents that I haven't seen that she's going to make a copy of and go ahead and provide me. And I asked her to go ahead and provide it to all the council members also, so you'll have it. Because one of the things she did was she went through and did an investigation of her own, read the contract, looked into it, and I'm glad I asked to try to see the records, because it illuminated that we appear to be short, based on her schedule, about $70,000 from 2019 through the present. There were 3 months in 2018 that she didn't include in the numbers. Did you all receive the schedule? Did you see that schedule that came in on, I guess, Friday? So it was missing about $70,000 in her mind, and then she mentioned a minute ago she thought she found more revenue on 2018 had been booked to the wrong account. Was that it? So anyway, Ms. Sousa, could you come up here and maybe just give us an overview of that schedule? And I don't know if everybody understands what was there, but she went in and accounted for utilities, the $1,000 a month, and then tried to account for the 25% of net profits. And I'm not sure if we've got that net profits numbers nailed down or what, but go ahead.
You have the updated.
We've got an updated one that includes those months there, and this is basically a breakdown of what was passed out.
On Friday.
Yeah.
So I updated the chart because we had 3 missing months in 2019, and I found them. I found them in another account. Well, I have to tell you that in order we can put numbers together from previous years, we have to read the accounting, whatever is on records. That's the only thing I try to put together, what it is in records, because there is no other way I can create the accounting again. So if you see in the first part, you have 2018, how much we invoice per month. That is the $1,000 plus the utilities, right? There is just 1 month or 2 months where the 25% was invoiced. That it was based on the profit for in the house. Why there is just 2 months? Because apparently, when you see the P&Ls or the results of those months, it's a loss. If there is a loss, there is not 25% additional to bill. Then in 2019, happened the same exercise, but until April 2019 is the last invoice that I found in records. Apparently, I found another document that says that there was a flood in May 2019. And it made me think, because this is what I'm telling you, I'm trying to read in the numbers what is happening. So I think that in April, when was the flood, everything was stopped, the billing and everything. I cannot tell you why, but it just stopped. And nothing else was billed. What I did was to make an average from May 2019 to now to April to March 2023, month per month, is an average. I didn't make a big science here, just the average of what we bill in the past, what we bill in the present. And I cannot bill the 25% because I don't have any record what was the profit of those months. Make sense?
I have a hard time understanding your accent. Do you have the net profit statements for all the months for 2018 through the present? Have you been presented with those?
Just until April 2019, because it was the last month that was billed.
So there were no P and L statements after that? And when I spoke to Ms. Timmons, she had said she had presented the city with all those. Why did not the accounting department, have you talked to, who administrated this contract?
Well, I've been working with Mary Green, that is our accountant that was previous year with us. And I've been working with her, and in the records, there's not really another way to do it.
Okay, is Ms. Green present?
No.
Okay. Has she explained why she did not follow up and try to find the missing revenue for those months?
Well, the only reason that she's giving me is that there were a lot of changes in the finance department, new people coming and going, and she didn't was told to invoice those, so she didn't invoice. Because usually what happened in this department, the finance director that is in place tells the team what to do, what to build, what to follow. Hopefully I will change that in the future, but in the past, that was the way they were working.
So it sounds like our accounting department failed us on that. It sounds like they failed us miserably, actually. In the private sector, people would have been fired big time for this. But
well, if you allow me, I come from the private sector,
Yeah.
and this is why I estimated the amounts.
yeah,
In order you have an idea, like a ballpark idea, how much we are talking about, and in case you want to, whenever you make your decision, you have something in mind how much we are talking about. But this is an estimate.
Again, I'm having a hard time here, but I will reiterate, I have no blame toward you in any way. You're a clean slate coming in here and looking at what happened. And was Mr. Mayor, Miss City Clerk, was Miss Green, was she directed not to bill anymore? Was she directed not to follow up on this? Were you all aware?
So no, I was not aware. One of the reasons that we've worked on trying to standardize the numbers in the budgeting system is so that issues like this are apparent to begin with. It's why for years we have all looked at the budget process, gone through the budget process, looked at the numbers and not recognized the deficiencies because there wasn't necessarily a uniform standard that would make it easy to notice when revenues were down. Y'all will recall that only in the last few years have we even started including revenue in each department. And so that revenue line item would have shown up just in general city revenues and makes it difficult for the council and for me when going through that process to even identify it. Instead, when we would get reimbursed for things like utilities, it would be entered in as an offsetting expense, right? And so it camouflaged this problem up until we finally have got that we've standardized the books in handling it that way, and then we went through the budget process and located that. If you look at the sheet that was passed out, here's my theory, I don't know. If you look back in 2018, you'll notice that what they would do was invoice multiple months at a time. So you'll see that in October 8th, we invoiced for May, June, and July. And October 31st, they invoiced for August and September. So we invoiced basically 5 months in a period of 2 weeks. And then we didn't invoice again for October, November, or December until March the following year, where they also, so there was a lag time between invoicing and months. And it appears that what would happen, especially, and it started occurring heavily, at least in mid-2018. In early 2018, it seemed to be one invoice at a time closer. For the months in 19, all 4, January, February, March, and April, were all invoiced in May, which means that what that tells me is that there was probably a group of invoices that would build up someone in that department would go, oh, we haven't invoiced for this because we don't have an invoicing system. There's no other invoicing that goes on remotely similar to this contract. And then I think that would spur someone to say, hey, you need to go invoice for these. I suspect, though, don't know, they built up and no one ever caught that and said, hey, you need to go invoice for that.
All I know is this is an unusual deal. It's an unusual deal. You've got a city clerk who is related to the lady that runs Team Summit. It was incumbent on both of you all.
As well as the council. Yes, sir.
No, not the council.
The council's not responsible?
No,
Okay.
you're the administrator of the city.
Okay.
We approved that contract. It was signed by Mayor Watson. And it was something he wanted to do, and so he put it in place. We approved it and allowed it to go in place. It looked like a reasonable deal.
So are you accusing and saying that something underhanded?
I am not doing that yet,
Okay.
but I'm saying that it was incumbent on you all to have administered this to the T and made sure there was no strangeness about it that there is. I mean, it's we haven't received any revenue off of this in 4 years. The contract expired in November of 2020, and the Team Summit was supposed to have vacated the premises at that time. And it really wasn't incumbent on us to do the billing. It was the contract states Team Summit should have prepared the P&L statement and then attached a check and sent it the following month after the thing. There should have been, it should have been apparent we weren't getting paid those 4 years.
It absolutely should have been, which is why we've been working on getting the books in order so that those numbers and that reporting that you think I magically know by virtue of having an office in the building is actually known, right? Because that system is finally getting there and is still not fully there to where these numbers are as easy to figure out as you and I would like them to be.
Well, I don't buy it.
I'm not selling it.
And
I'm just telling you the truth.
I'm still looking through it. I'd like to see your binder and your numbers and that sort of thing, and I'd like for the rest of the city council to get up to speed on this. $70,000 is a big number, and we need to get that
Absolutely.
money. Are you planning to get that money?
Well, so as you know, this whole project is in limbo pending this city council's investigation. I don't have a contract at this point in time.
Yep.
Based on advice from the city attorney, we shouldn't be billing and resuming that on a month-to-month basis. I can let the city attorney explain unless and until there is a contract in place for reasons I can let the city attorney explain. That is one of the options. One of the options is to look back on the period of time that that was not invoiced, make a determination of, the council make a determination of what months, if any, should be waived due to the closure of COVID, and we can invoice for the entire thing. We can, however the council decides to do that, because it is out of contract.
You can't have it both ways. If somebody is continuing to occupy something, they owe some money on that. It just doesn't wash to say, it expired, so they get to use it for free, because that's
I don't think anyone has said that.
Yeah,
I
but
don't think anyone has said
I'm
that.
just saying, please don't come to that conclusion. So,
Okay, yes, sir.
At the very least, this is very gross incompetence on our accounting department in the past and the past financial directors, so.
Yes, but that's what I've said several meetings ago, right?
Well, it's more than that. The buck stops with you, and it stops with
I also
the
said
city
that
clerk, who
ultimately
also is over
I was
the.
responsible because it was a department, at least for the months that are while I was in office, that ultimately the negligence and the missing of these invoices ultimately falls back on my responsibility. You'll recall I've said we can go through this whole investigation, but I've said the same thing from the beginning. It was gross error. We fundamentally changed the way that we even look at the books. So you're accusing me of being...
I'm not accusing you yet, Mr. Mayor.
Yet,
but
is the operative word.
I'm not
It's
that too
implied
far
in what
away.
you're saying, and there are people hearing. So let me tell you what we have done. We've been working on the books in such a way that these sort of nonsensical, completely unacceptable errors and oversights are caught, recognized, and identifiable early on, and we have done that. We're currently looking at how we can, and this is up to the council, as to how we can go forward with billing. At the end of the day, this is not just something that impacts a company that is leasing it. There are people who have leased this venue and planned weddings. As anyone who's ever been married or heard of a wedding or been to a wedding, you don't plan those on day one and then have them the next day. So there's events planned. We can cancel the contract immediately, take the keys and say can't use it at all. What do we do then with the Monmouth residents who have that venue leased out? These are all the types of things that I've been trying to focus us on.
I've got an answer for that. Those dates can be honored. The Parks Department can decide on what the rental rate is for a wedding or whatever it is. Team Summit can go ahead and have that event. And they just pay the city for that rental rate, and they can do whatever else it was they quoted. I think Ms. Timmons said she could work with that anyway, so that should work out. So, I mean, if we decide to just let Parks Department handle it from now on, it doesn't have to stay in Team Summit's deal.
100% agree.
And especially after the city's proven that they can't administer something like this.
Yeah,
So-
well, especially as it currently is. One of the issues here is that they were waiting on, because it included reimbursement for utilities, so they'd wait on the electrical bill to arrive, the gas bill to arrive, the phone bill's pretty steady, and the water bill's pretty steady. You had to wait for all of those to get in citywide, go back out, assign each of those to the proper department, which in this case, Park on the River was its own department number under the section. It's now wrapped under Parks as a program code. And then at that point, they were able to send the invoice out. It was flawed from the get-go.
Okay. I'm going to yield and let other council members have some questions. I'm sorry, I've kind of hogged the deal here, but I got on a roll.
Councilmember Gronwall?
Yeah, I do have some things to say. So I've given this a lot of thought. And although I was not able to attend our last council meeting, I did watch the live feed and take some notes, and I've taken some notes and listened to the conversation. This is now the third meeting, I think, that we've discussed this at length, if not longer, because it actually came up in budget meetings back in December, when I wasn't even officially a council person. So a couple of questions that I want addressed by Mr. Mosley, just because he brought it up. I heard you say that there was no revenue in 4 years. I think we need to define revenue, because what I'm looking at in 2018, there was revenue. There was some revenue in 2019. So I want to be very careful when we say there was no revenue in 4 years and that we're missing $70,000, because 20, 21, and 22, those years were COVID. Now, there wasn't a verbal agreement or an agreement with the council and Team Summit that with COVID, just like all other restaurants and event venues had shut down, there were no events. So there should have been a conversation that says, let's suspend this lease. And though that wasn't said, that's what I attribute those 3 years to be. And it sounds like from Mr. Mayor, what he just talked about with 2019, as you can see, all the invoices went out at one time in May. So for all we know, and what I'm hearing is that some of those other months could be stuck in some of our other categories, and I think I heard that from Mr. Mayor as well, that we haven't really been able to untangle yet. So I've heard time and time again, and Mayor Norris just said this as well, our accounting was at fault. We've said that repeatedly, and we're doing our best to untangle this. Another thing, it seems like kind of the umbrella concern as well, is that this isn't making revenue. Well, it has. I mean, we have seen that. So again, I think we need to define revenue, figure out what we consider it to be successful. What does that look like for us? Because if we are to hand it over to Parks and Rec, they're not gonna give us the $1,000 in rental every year, or every month, right? So we're actually gonna lose revenue. If that's our main concern is about revenue, we would actually lose revenue by handing it over to Parks and Rec, not to mention that they might have to, probably would have to, hire another position just to take on, because they are working to the hilt right now as it is. So if revenue's an issue, moving it to Parks and Rec, I'm okay with that too. But if revenue's an issue, we're not gonna achieve what we want to with that. Again, I think we need to be really careful with $70,000, because I don't really see $70,000 missing if you're going to count the COVID years. I don't think that's really fair. That's a really big accusation. So what I want to get to, hopefully today, is for us to define what our end game is. We've all agreed that this was not handled the way that it should be. There's only so many times we can say that. We have it on record, on public record, in meetings, time and time again. So, what is our end game from here? We know that. How do we move forward? We've put things into place to make it clear moving forward. I think now the next step is to really look at the lease agreement, decide if we want to move forward with Team Summit, change the lease, update the lease, add to the lease however we want to, but we have to move forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, basically, I think we're all agreed that in the past this was a mess. But with everything, this is kind of complicated. It's not as simple as a spreadsheet. So I'm content so far from what you found, and you're looking that we will find, because you've already found some other invoices that were there. We give it time to get a full assessment of everything that's going on. I also don't know legally with the contract expired if we can charge for having no contract. That's another part. So the past is one issue we have to figure out, but I don't think we have the information here to make any call on that tonight. So then we need to worry about the short term and the long term. I agree. There's if people have already booked it, we don't want to do anything to change their plans. It's not like you can rebook a wedding. So definitely something to bridge on the short term, I think is good for. And then we need to sit down, give it time to bring us options of what is the best long-term solution. And for me, the priority should be, how do we maximize the use of this for the people of Maumelle? Is it what we have with a new contract? Is it to be handed over to the Parks and Recs, or is it to be a hybrid of the both? I think we owe that to the people to figure out, because this is a gem of a place, and we don't rob very other parks looking solely at a profit. Now, we do have opportunity to bring profit in, and I'm always about that. But again, this should be how to maximize the people's enjoyment over the long term. And so I'm not sure who the belly button for that would be to come up with options. But I think that should be what we decide on tonight.
Thank you, sir. I want to, both Councilmember Gronwald and Mazzoni mentioned possible more revenues. I don't know that we're anticipating finding that, Ms. Souza?
No, I already went to all the records and tried to look specifically for the 1,000 is a trigger for us. I couldn't find nothing. That's why I say with kind of certainty that April was the last invoice. Okay. And also because I found this other document that there was a flood in May 2019. So everything was stopped somehow because that problem that there was in the park. Make sense? So, and then I couldn't find nothing else. There is no invoice, nothing anymore, because Mr. Timon says the other day, and I agree in her statement, what we bill, she paid. So that is a true statement. Because otherwise, we will have a receivable, open receivable, and there is nothing there. So very difficult to find if we build something else at this point.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, let me respond to some of the questions here that Ms. Grunwald had. The 4 years I'm counting from May of 2019 through the present. It's almost 4 years. That's what I'm counting here because I'm going by the schedule that Ms. Souza did. If you see the highlighted numbers there, those add up to 68,177. So that's those numbers.
But just as a reference, sorry.
Could you
Just
pull the
as-
mic down closer?
Just as a reference, the pandemic started in March 2020.
Right.
I think that's important to mention.
I think there were probably events.
I'm sure there has been events since March of 2020. I'm 100% sure of that.
Yeah, I'm sure too. So that needs to be accounted for. And you know, the contract, well, there's somebody's honoring the contract and by keeping the facility, so they owe something for the use, or they owe damages for not vacating and making the place available for some other situation or a renewal or something. I don't think we're going to lose revenue. Not necessarily. The Parks Department can rent this out for the same events that people would have, and I would guess that we'll have more people trying to rent because it's through the parks. A lot of people think that Park on the River is off limits, that it's only for weddings. So I think we'll find a lot of families doing birthdays and a lot of things like that. So, you know, we can't say we can't match the revenue we were supposed to have had.
We can, because we won't be receiving the $1,000 in rental fees. We will only be charging for events, which is $1,000 for non-Maumelle residents and $800 for Maumelle residents. So Parks and Rec would actually have to have anywhere from 15 to 20 events per month to make up for the $1,000 rental each month.
Well, we don't know what the Parks Department is going to charge. They may charge $1,000 for a
Well,
wedding.
on social media, people were complaining even about the $800, which is more than reasonable for an event. So if
Yeah.
you raise that event, people are less likely to have an event. So then we go from 15 to 20 events per month that we need to make up the revenue to a whole lot less.
Well, we won't be splitting it with anybody. So,
It's still not as much revenue as what we were getting. And you can't hold somebody accountable for a lease that didn't exist and imply that they were somehow squatters when they weren't, because the lease didn't exist. And it was during a global pandemic. And it is the city council's responsibility just as much as anybody in the administration, because just like we discovered in December of 2022 that, hey, this has been missing for a while, it should have been discovered by the council each December prior, going back to 2019.
And by me, I do think I hold more
I'm saying
culpability than
it
the
was a
council
group.
does.
I mean, there's enough blame to go around, but at some point we have to figure this out and move forward with forward movement plans.
Anybody else have a question on something I said that they didn't think was accurate?
Mr. City Attorney?
Mr. City Attorney.
So I've looked at the contract. Of course, the contract is very explicit that it was 5 years only, and it would not be extended unless the city council explicitly said so. So if we're trying to treat it as an implied contract after November of 2020, we would run into trouble there, even if we wanted to keep billing. I think there are very good, I would say, equity arguments that because COVID shut down the entire event center industry, there's merit in not billing for the COVID period. That's not really a legal consideration, but I think there are strong arguments there. It was also mentioned by Mr. Mayor, my belief that
we need to be either under contract or specifically ordering them to vacate as soon as possible. You'll see that I drafted for Councilmember Williams, that's later on in the agenda, Councilmember Williams, a proposal that would put us back under contract. Whatever decision the city council makes, of course, is the council's to make. But before we go forward billing for this month, for example, or next month, for example, I would want us to be under an explicit contract. Even if it's just for a shorter period of time, while Mr. Mayor, completes an investigation of other options, completes an investigation as to, the finances and so forth. That's just to cover us. I would prefer us to be under an explicit contract.
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you, sir. Well, there's been a lot of words over the last 6 weeks about this, and I kind of am echoing, I think, what council members Gronwald and Mazzoni have said about, I don't think we're going to solve anything at council meetings. There's a lot of financial discovery that has been done, and that there may be more to come. I guess I'm in the camp where I don't necessarily agree that funds are missing because of what the city attorney just said. We've not been billing. We don't have an active contract. And, looking at the lease agreement to begin with, of course, this wasn't done by, I don't think, well, it started, what year? It ended in 20, so I guess it first popped up in maybe in 10, and I think there was one before that maybe? I don't remember. But anyway, it's just, we're talking about this 25% net profit, and we've spent a lot of time talking about why they haven't paid this 25% net profit. And I'm just doing the math in my head, and after expenses, I kind of see why they wouldn't have 25% net profit to pay. I don't know what kind of revenue this would have even had generated when your events were so limited as well. But I know there's another agenda item down the road, next, for what we could do going forward, but I don't think at this point the city is in a position to manage the rental. And kind of with what Councilmember Gronwald was saying, if we turn it over to Parks and Rec, which it is a park, and they have taken care of stuff in the past, they're going to have employees staffing this, and that's going to be costing the city. So that there is a cost that's going to go on with that. And with event management, that's a whole separate beast. And Parks and Rec, I don't think they're set up currently for event management where they're going to market and promote and then staff an event. So I'm not interested at this point in placing this on Parks and Rec to try to recover revenue, because we're not going to, sure, we may rent it more, but we're going to have additional expenses that go along with that. So I'm kind of the same way. I want to have a short-term solution and get under contract if that's what we want to do, and then it looks like that other resolution says, the city can study this for 6 months and see what happens down the road. I agree we need to have a long-term plan. It seems like I came in on the very back end of this, and it was, I think when the contract was last signed, I was kind of monitoring what was going on in the council a little bit. And I remember thinking then that it just seemed like it seemed like a strange purchase when it was originally purchased. I understand they bought the property. It's a beautiful, beautiful property. But it's kind of like we just bought it and just so we could have it, and then nobody's ever known what to do with it. And I've heard multiple councils, it seems like this has been debated multiple times, what are we going to do with Park on the River? Because it's a great amenity, but I just don't think anything's going to be solved in a council meeting, and I would prefer that we have some short-term plans for how we deal with this going forward, study it outside of the council meeting through, however the mayor wants to set that up, and then make some long-term plans. And maybe that long-term plan is working with an event company that we sign a contract with to manage it and market it. The city is not an event manager currently. Maybe we want to be in Parks and Rec. I don't know if we want to be at some point in the future, but expenses come with that. So I'll yield my time, but one other thing I do wonder is why in the world there's a phone out there? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the alarms are on the phone lines.
There's other methods.
Other methods. Councilmember Mosley?
Oh, I kind of almost forgot what I was going to say here, but I'll reply to some of these folks. I don't think revenues is a priority here. Obviously, we've been making almost, it hadn't been worth doing to have an events company manage this thing. The optics on this thing are terrible. It looks, there's going to be a lot of people that say there's some kind of a cover-up going on here and that sort of thing. I think what we ought to be doing here on the short term is to let Parks and River come up with and manage this thing for at least a year and see how it goes. And the Parks Director is more than welcome to come up and share his thoughts on that if he has some concerns or thinks that's something they can do.
Councilmember Mosley, would it be okay if I ran the meeting?
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir,
Thank you, sir.
but that would be some input I would like to have. I see you shaking your head, sir.
Clerk Timmons?
I just wanted to respond to Councilmember Mosley. You asked if I directed the accounting staff to stop billing. Absolutely not. I wouldn't do that for the Park on the River nor any of our other vendors. I do not participate in any of the invoicing or the billing. Never have I. So I just wanted to be clear that no, I did not direct the staff to stop billing the Park on the River nor any other entity.
I'll reply to that, Mr. Mayor.
When your turn is up. Councilmember Holt?
I really am not sure that I really actually want to say very much of anything. I know the council well enough to know that if they have their mind set up to do a certain thing, they're going to do it. I don't understand or not sure, are we more interested in actually exploring what did happen in the financial matters? Do we really want to know? You know, you have to look at the past in order to plan for the future. We all admit, apparently, that we've not done a very good job of handling our affairs due to whatever reason. During the budget meeting in December, Councilmember Grumwald specifically brought up the subject, to the surprise of all of us actually. What kind of revenue are we collecting from the Parks on the River? And our Ms. Mathis didn't know. Are we collecting anything? Well, and she didn't know. As I recall, also, Mr. Mayor, you did not have awareness of whether or not we were collecting anything. So apparently, whatever financial matters there were out there, it was not being paid well attention to. I don't. I don't think that there was any deliberate and willful misgivings anywhere, but it longs for a pause, and let's have a look at where are we financially, and what can we do about this? You know, if we really do want to rent this out, are we limited to the folks who have already been renting it and dealt with that, or can we open the door? Perhaps there's other companies out there someplace that would may have other ideas of they already do this, and maybe they could use it on their own. Competition wouldn't hurt a little bit if we're only going to have just one party, but then ask the city attorney to go ahead and sign the contract, because the council is split. I won't say anything else about it.
Councilmember Shin?
I've got 25 years in hospitality management, and just to sit here and throw this to Parks and say, oh, here, run this, that won't work. There will have to be somebody responsible for this if you're going to market it as a venue. If you're just going to say, hey, we've got this space, y'all come, Parks can do that. But to actually market it and to do what would be probably the most beneficial for us, that's not going to happen through Parks and Rec. personal opinion.
Councilmember Mosley?
Okay, for the city clerk, her comments there, you say you didn't do any invoicing and that sort of thing, which is probably, I'm sure that's correct, but you were over the accounting department, is that not correct?
My fiduciary responsibilities in accounting have nothing to do with the day-to-day activities in regards to billing and invoicing. What my fiduciary responsibilities are for that particular department have to do with taxing of businesses, nothing to do with what you're accusing me of.
As I said, I'm not accusing you, it just, the
I'm
optics look
sorry,
very
yet.
bad. But you are over accounting. I don't enjoy doing this. I don't enjoy this at all. In fact, I'm very disappointed that I've had to raise this issue, but it's our job to do so. I told you after the last meeting when you said I was causing trouble,
No,
that
hold on, that is not what I said. Please say what I said.
you said I was slowing down the accounting transition.
And?
I don't know what else,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. But it's our job to look into this sort of thing. If something doesn't look right, it's our job to look into it. I got a heck of a lot of blowback last meeting just for asking to look at the records. Our responsibility as a city council is for the financial well-being of this city. It's state law. That's something that maybe some new council members don't know, but we're supposed to watch the dollars, make sure they don't disappear, or make sure we're getting the revenue we're supposed to get. It's our job. So it hadn't been fun doing this, but somebody needed to do it. So I've talked to our auditors, and I'm going to ask them to look into this as part of their audit this year and see what they think. So we need somebody independent that can look at it, and they're independent, so I'm going to ask them to do that.
I have a public comment card from Timmons. If you could please come down and state your name and address for the record, please.
Timmons, 117 South Shore Drive. Each of you guys have known me for years. Each of you know my service, know my heart, and it is your job to look into what you think is not happening. I welcome that. I want you to go and find that everything was done, at least on our part, like it should have been. The only downfall we had was February of 19, when everything closed up. You guys act like you don't have, and Jess, you said something about the last time that it's a travesty and we don't give charity.
I didn't say that, but I did say
What?
it was a financial travesty, that's true.
No, you did say that the city is not responsible for giving charity. And you aimed it right at me.
Do we
That
have
was
those minutes, can I interrupt? Do we have those minutes on record, and can we
Yeah.
pull those up if we do? Is that on tape?
The meetings are recorded. You can always review the minutes, the meetings as you choose. The minutes are not a dictation, so it's not a word-for-word transcription. But if you would like to review what you said, you always have that opportunity.
And I know you said that because it hit me like,
Well,
is
that's true.
this a personal? You know, who else have you said, I don't think what I give to the city is charity. I give service to my community, and I've done that, and I've been proud of it for so many years. And you guys act like, 19, the COVID was, oh, happy, happy, joy, joy. It shut everything down for 2 years, at least in my business. It shut everything down in 2 years. And I thought, and I knew that the contract was going to be over. I had conversations about renewing the contract, but I knew the city was going through all this rigmarole. I paid everything I was charged, and I thought, oh, they're giving me a break, because they know that the governor has shut the darn city down. And you keep talking about these years where everybody was struggling, including me. I was given when I didn't have to give. Just like hometown Thanksgiving. Which one of you came and said, Timmons, do you need help? I know you're struggling. I know you always give. I know you pick up the expenses. What did you guys do? Not a darn thing. I've given my service to this community when I didn't have. I would give to the community because my family has love. So we give, this was the first Thanksgiving that my kids had together, because we're out there serving the community.
Seconds.
And then you're going to act like we did something wrong. As I say, you're right to check into questions, but the way you guys have done it, the things that you have said, really hurts my feelings, and it takes a lot for my feelings to hurt. I've been told, you go talk to that little black girl, she'll give you anything. A Maumelle resident told somebody that. And of course, I gave them what they needed. I'm a 70-year-old person, and people still calling me little black girls. That's like me saying you're a little white boy. I've tried not to, I'm disappointed, because I defend you guys to no end, and you don't know that. I try to make you look good. I take the heat for a lot of stuff that's done, and I'm defending you.
Thank you, Timmons. Councilmember Williams?
Well, I guess now is not the time to discuss the resolution, but some things have been said that I think we need to segue into that maybe. We are not an executive or administrative body. We are a legislative body. We're a governing body. We have a very good, capable mayor. We're not a body of mayors. We have a mayor, and we are not it. We're not police officers. We're not trying to do a lot of detective work and try to find a smoking gun. That's not our job. Our job is, when we find something that's wrong, we need to point it out and move forward in trying to fix it. Our very capable mayor has already owned all of this flawed issue. We all know that COVID hit. We all know that everybody struggled. We all know that there's a problem. What we need to do is allow the mayor to get to the bottom of it, give him some time, just like Mr. Mazzoni said, to figure out what we need to do, bring it back to us to vote for, because that's what we do. I found a section in our city code, and I'm gonna pass this out, since everybody else has a handout. I get to have one too. And I want us to look at this because we are in terrible violation of our own sections of the city code. It's section 2-206, and I'm gonna read it, 206B. It shall be understood that authority for the management of the city shall pass through the mayor, and that he or a representative authorized by him shall be the official contact between the city council and employed personnel. Members of the city council should refrain as individuals from discussing management problems with the personnel of the city, except in cases where the city council may deem it necessary to confer with personnel at regular or special meetings of the city council, and then in the presence of the mayor. I think a lot of this has been done without the presence of the mayor. Now, I know there is a lot of discovery, and there may be some more, but, and when we get to the point of when we get to where we're talking about this resolution, we can talk more about that. But we need to behave ourselves and do our job and be a legislative body. We are not the mayor. If we wanted to be mayors, there's a mechanism in place for that. We're gonna have to wait 4 years. We can't do it now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam City Clerk, Treasurer. Councilmember Mosley.
Ms. Timmons' comments raised some questions. I'll try to find the answers on that, probably, I don't know, through the city finance director, when she gives me some copies of records and that sort of thing. Questions like, how long have we received the profit and loss statements? She had told me she'd sent them all. If that's the case, then it's our accounting department's a lot of problems, but doesn't explain why she didn't surrender the property on time and that sort of thing. The contract was pretty clear. So I don't know. There's still a lot of things. That's why I'm asking for the auditors to look into this. I don't think it's my job to mount an investigation, but I think somebody needs to look into it and kind of get back and see what they think. So that's what I'm doing. I'm through with this discussion of everybody else is.
All right, that concludes unfinished business. Park on the River brings us to new business. First and only item of new business is Resolution 2023-13 related to the future use of Park on the River property. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2023-13, a resolution related to the future use of the Park on the River property.
Councilmember Williams, this was your resolution.
Yes, sir. And I proposed this resolution based on these discussions that we've been having ad nauseum. But the reason, and you and I had this conversation, what I propose is that we renew Timmons' contract for 18 months. And the reason for 18 months is she has weddings booked just up to 18 months, nothing beyond that. We wanted just to have a renewed contract for 18 months, and that 6 months time, the first 6 months of that, allow you the opportunity to do the investigation, have your public meetings, have your public hearings, get the public involved in deciding what our options are for this property, and bring that to us so that we will have something to discuss and something to vote for. And that's the purpose of this resolution. This is to give this back to you, Mr. Mayor, this entire issue, and then bring us something to discuss later.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner?
Question for the city attorney. I'll go ahead and give you a 30-second head start here, sir, to get prepared. Really, my only question on this is, it appears we are doing away with all of the utility charges, the net profit, all of that, and we're just doing a flat 1,500. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir, that's the proposal.
Okay. And then, I think I'm not going to beat this dead horse again. I think we all agree there have been problems, and nothing is going to be solved in the next few months. I would support doing something in the short term so that we can do something better, hopefully in the long term. And to what Ms. Williams just said, I didn't even think about the fact that events may have been planned out up to 18 months. But I also see we need to come to some conclusion on this in the next 6 months, because if we don't by the fall, we're now pushing a year out from when this contract would be up. And we need to decide what we're going to do. If we're going to leave it outsourced, totally fine. We need to start advertising and putting it out for bid that we're going to have that come up again. So I would support doing something in the short term, and I think 18 months is more than appropriate for a lease. Parks and Rec, I do not want to put them in the event management business yet. I'm not even sure if I would want to long term, but they're not staffed for that. But this solves two problems. The short term, it looks like there could be revenue of $1,500. We're not doing that weird dance of trying to figure out what utilities are and then asking them for their P&Ls so that we can figure out what their 25% is. That's just a weird deal anyway, personally. Especially, anyway. I appreciate that we're going to have a short-term and a long-term plan with this, and I would appreciate the mayor's office being the one to run it, figure out what kind of proposal we're going to have for down the road. So I would like to do a short-term, long-term solution like this. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, there's some aspects of this I like and some that I don't. My solution is different than your solution, because my solution is to turn it over to Parks, and then I wouldn't have any problem with the same deal going through rigmarole and figuring out exactly what we need to do. But I think for optics, I think since this has been so badly administered, to say the least, we need to move away from what we've been doing, which again, I'm not going to go into detail, but it just looks bad. We need to just turn it over to the Parks for about 6 months. The commitments that are in place can be honored. There's no problem. There shouldn't be any problem with honoring that. I think Ms. Timmons said she can work with that type of arrangement. I know she makes good money on weddings and that sort of thing, so it should work out. So I'm going to vote no on this, just because it should go to Parks.
Councilmember Shin?
One question on this. It's an expected lease as opposed to a billed lease. We're not going to send them a statement every month like we did with the old one?
I don't think that would be necessary, no, because it would be a flat fee, and we could put it into the lease on the date that it would be due every month. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
Yeah, there's something about this I like and some I don't. I really think, especially with people who have already planned just to dump it in Parks and Rec's lap, where they're very competent, that's a whole new system that they're not ready for, and I don't think just doing that now would make any sense at all. I thought originally 18 months was a long time because you want an option in 6, but then this would be there, but that kind of makes sense. Now that's a gray area that.
Want to give between a bride or give between the bride and mama, and some money being spent, so we need to leave that alone.
Yeah, I just don't know how, hey, if we go with the status quo, that's the final answer, everything's great, but if it ends up going in a different direction, would that muddy up any of the contracting future decisions because you might have a contract out with this for use so that if we decide to go another way, I mean, if we decide to keep going in this way, then it won't matter. Does that make sense what I'm at?
Yeah, I think this makes sense. You're giving the mayor a due date of 6 months to come back with what the options are. And that would be about a year before the end of the contract, right? This is written so that the new lease would end at the end of September 2024. And if they're booking events about a year in advance, that would be about a year. I think we just would be explicit with, if you decide to go this way, you'd be explicit with Team Summit that they are not to book any events after September 2024, unless 6 months down the road, the city decides to go with them again for a continuation of the contract.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was kind of going to. There would always be a window, just didn't enunciate as well as you did. So, got anything?
Councilmember Holt?
I will support this based upon my understanding as to what the city attorney has recommended. Sounds like that I know he's been very thorough with it. And it sounds like it's a doable thing for a 6-month period or whatever period. I would like to ask a question. Are there any commitments on the part of the Timmons for the next 6 months? Is that why we're doing it 6 months? I mean, are there already some booked right now?
I believe what the resolution says is that within 6 months, we'll come back with a proposal and decide what to do.
Okay.
And then that gives an extension of approximately a year that we can begin, if the city's taking it over, that allows us to budget money and begin that process for taking it over. If it's to put it out, put a restaurant in, then it's to find someone to move it. It gives that buffer where once the council has decided, we have that period of time.
And then just during the COVID deal, why did the city not change the contract or make an adjustment and set it aside so that the Timmons Company was not responsible for it? I mean, why didn't we make a change in the contract during that period of time?
So the contract expired at the end of 19. I recall a discussion at the end of 20? I recall a discussion sometime in 20 during COVID about needing to renew, but we were right in the middle of COVID, and it was like, okay, we'll talk about it at some point in time. This got dropped, from what I can tell, at least from my perspective, and then by the time Liz, the former finance director, was here, this was already not something occurring. So from her mind, this is not anything that she had ever had in the back of her mind. It was from the former finance director. I think what happened is it was just, we have no other agreements like this. It's a property that wasn't owned or managed by a department. It's a parks facility that Parks didn't administer. They maintain and upkeep the facility, but the administration of it was handled in the finance department, who doesn't administer contracts like this. It was a unique beast, and it just got lost during the transition. You know, it just got lost and forgotten about. Somewhere along the way, and it looks like it pretty routinely got lost, going at least back into 18, and we didn't even go back before that. It pretty routinely would get lost and then found. It got, what I suppose is it got lost. The last date invoiced was May of 19, and I think it just got lost and not found again.
Okay.
And it didn't show up on our radars until we fixed the problems with the way that the expenses and revenues were calculated. It didn't even show up on reports because we didn't attribute revenues in our books to departments. So you just didn't notice that revenue had disappeared. And so it got forgotten. It was a totally crummy way of administering a contract. I agree with Councilmember Mosley that it is, I forget the language you used, but insane it was not what you used, but it basically, it was not managed well. I picked that up, and ultimately, because I didn't catch it, it's my responsibility. We talked about the people, the heads of everyone in the finance department being on the chopping block. Well, this is it's taxpayer money, it's taxpayer property, but compared to the whales we've been slaying in there, this is small potatoes. It's a lease for $12,000 a year, right? We've been tackling misallocation of millions of dollars. This is not, and was not, and nor would I say it should have been, the finance director's priority at that time. There were bigger fish to fry. We filleted them, fried them, we still have more to go. But, ultimately, and I think it should be said, based on the numbers we have for 2018, we billed all of it at 2018. My understanding is we have the P&Ls, the profit and loss statements from the Team Summit for all of 2018. Our 25% of that was $1,549, which means the gross, which means the total net profit that Team Summit made, according to our records, and we don't go in and audit their books, but you can look at the events and those things. The total net profit was $6,196 to Team Summit for 2018. Anyways, I forgot what your point was, or your question, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fair.
Councilmember Mosley.
Oh, good Lord. Mr. Mayor, I would like to, again, get the Parks Director up here to see if he could administer this thing. From what I understand, they've got an accounting program set up to where he can rent out various facilities and all that. It shouldn't be a problem. Could I call the Parks Director and ask him?
If he can book the thing, come on down, Mr. Rayburn. Name and occupation for the record, sir.
Philip Rayburn, 124 Pleasantwood Drive, Parks Director. To do what Timmons does is not what I said we would do. What we would do would be, yes, we could rent the facility, but that's where we would stop. And we would have it set up to where if somebody wanted to come look at it, it's going to be on our time between 3 to 4 on certain days. Because that would be a way. I probably would never tell the council or the mayor there's something the Parks Department can't do. To begin with, we would try something, but to do what Ms. Timmons does, that wouldn't be us. We would just rent the space. And if it went to us, we're going to have to buy tables, because those aren't our tables. And all the decorations and all that stuff, that's something that she does. That's what she provides as a service. Yes, I could put on my calendar that we're renting it for a birthday party or a wedding, but they're going to have to go to somebody else to make that wedding.
Let me ask you this. Could you maintain lists of various vendors that can provide tables,
Again,
food and all that, and somebody would call and say, I want to rent it for a wedding, do you have anybody, you can say, all we can do is rent the facility, but
I
here.
do have somebody. She's sitting right there. She's one-stop shop.
Right.
That's what she does.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that could happen.
You guys have to also remember, I had 2 employees that were taken during COVID, and I'm 2 employees down, and I had those employees for maybe 4 months. So, I'm down now. I'm down to 2 employees currently.
But you could administer if asked.
Like I said, I'm not going to tell you I can't. Yes, sir, I could.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, I'd like to, thank Councilmembers Grunwald and Mosley for bringing up this issue, because obviously this is something, as the mayor has acknowledged, it's fallen through the cracks, and it was something we needed to address. I also agree with City Attorney Thornton that anything that's beyond the contract, I don't think we have a legal right to try to say, hey, you owe us money for that. You know, this has obviously been a mess, and, you know, our best option here, rather than so much trying to figure out exactly what went wrong, I think we've done a fairly good job of that, is to try to find a way to move forward that's in the best interest of the city and for everybody involved. So, you know, I would like to make a proposal to approve Resolution 2023-13.
I've got a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-13. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
I've got a motion second to discuss Resolution 2023-13. Any discussion on that issue? Yes. Was that all, Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, that concludes.
Councilmember Williams?
One thing, when people, especially me, I mean, Timmons has, I've had 2 weddings at Park on the River. I've been to several baby showers. I've been to other parties. When people book Park on the River, they're booking for Timmons' expertise. She does all things well. She does it with excellence. And I think if we were to give it to Parks or anything like that, they would feel like they had been slighted. They would feel like they were being duped, because you don't book Park on the River because it's just a Maumelle place. You're booking Timmons and her excellence and her know-how and her expertise in this area. So that's all I have to say about that.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
So, and for me, just going back to the 18 months, because if we end up where the best option is, well, we have the current option, everything's fine. But if we expand it into areas that either Summit can't do or we like to elsewhere, would this eliminate us to go, okay, from this point on, we would, you know, hey, we're gonna do birthday parties, which say Summit doesn't do. We're gonna contract out to this vendor for that. This resolution wouldn't prevent that at, say, 6 months down the road.
Do you mean, would it prevent us from also contracting with another?
Well, I mean, that could be one thing where and again, I'm just trying to keep all our options open and not, so because there has to be some type of venue. This is a venue, so you need something like that. And if we decided to add other options on there that weren't quite covered, say, hey, we're gonna have some other entity do this part, you're doing weddings, or, yeah, you don't wanna do it anymore, we're gonna go to another or something, would that limit us at 6 months down the road? Because then if someone else couldn't pick it up at all for another 12 months, our hands might be tied. So we might not be able to make a decision in 6 months.
Unless we agreed with Team Summit to terminate the new lease agreement early, no, she would have the lease agreement through the end of September 2024. But part of the lease agreement would be that the city of Maumelle and Maumelle organizations can use it Mondays and Tuesdays at no charge, subject to appropriate scheduling. So it's not like Team Summit would have the sole use of the facility.
Okay, so if we, for whatever reason, pick an expanded service that Team Summit doesn't exist, that wouldn't tie our hands from making that decision. And I wish I had an example to say, hey, I'll just say birthday parties. Just say, hey, they don't want to do birthday parties, so we want to search for this. You know, would that open us up between the 6 months down the road to the 18 months where we could be able to do birthday parties?
I think the main benefit of having the staggered time is, it seems like a lot of these events are booked out quite a ways in advance. And depending on what options the mayor comes back with, we might have to put it out for bid. There might be, you know, remodeling that might have to be done. So that period of time, I mean, that's why we're trying to push it out so far in advance, I think, is to do a proper, because it might take a lot of time.
Okay.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, Mr. City Attorney, said here we would, with the same general terms as the 2015 agreement, would that include the right to cancel by either party? I would assume so.
Let me see, I've got it attached.
It's under 1A and 1B, termination for cause and termination without cause.
Thank you, yes, those would be the same terms. The only changes that the resolution would make to the lease agreement would be to payments and to the length,
And to the what?
the length of the contract.
Okay.
Councilmember Gardner?
Just wanted to point out, in the termination without cause section, it does say that the lease shall not finally terminate until the date of the last event which is booked and reserved as of the date of the receipt of the notice. So to say that we can cancel it at any time, if we're gonna use the same termination language, if Team Summit has booked something in the future, this says that we cannot terminate until her events that she has booked have concluded, so.
She's not booked past the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Is there any additional discussion on Resolution 2023-13? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
No.
All opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Resolution 2023 is adopted. That concludes new business. We'll move on to mayor's comments. My comments were just related to the tornado. We heard most of it from the chiefs. I won't double down on that. So we'll move on to council member comments. Councilmember Holt.
Mr. Mayor, I received this card in the mail a few days ago. It happens to be from the Arkansas Federal Credit Union. As I recall, you said y'all made a major effort to invite them to plant their building in our city. It said, visit us in Maumelle, start earning more. It says, visit us in Maumelle to discover how you can earn a high interest rate on your balance, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Mayor, since they are not here, the address is clearly North Little Rock, but they're using Maumelle to advertise them making money, and I don't think we're making anything off of it. Would it be appropriate to send them a letter and ask them to please stop using us?
I may save the city attorney on this one. There was some laws and lawsuits in the past where a city has, and it's been years since I've looked into this, where cities have tried to enforce that. And the reality is that we think of Maumelle as a geopolitical, with boundaries. Maumelle is also an area, right? And so you'd probably find that there are a lot of people that live in Maumelle and think Arkansas Federal Credit Union is in Maumelle. And so what tends to happen is that we can't enforce it. And because they are where they are, I would not volunteer to send them a letter saying, please don't say you're in Maumelle.
Just thought I'd throw it out.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I would just follow up a little bit on what this item that Ms. Williams passed out. I'm going to have to read that several times, but I don't know who's guilty of discussing management problems with personnel. I know I've refrained from contacting anybody since the last meeting, except for the city attorney. And I did have a conversation with the finance director right before the meeting where she said she had some records she could send me. So that's about it. So I don't know if it's criticism that we don't like to see, but we have a right here in public comment to praise or criticize what's going on. And so I have a perfect right to criticize something, and I will when I see something that I think's not right. I think the city attorney could attest to that. It's not all praise. You can't say you can't have a viewpoint because it's negative. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes, I'd like to express, once again, my appreciation to Chief Pickard and Chief Buford for the wonderful job they did dealing with the devastating tornado that impacted our neighbors. I know all of us on the council applauded them after they discussed it earlier, but I just didn't think that was quite enough. I wanted to express my thanks. Thanks.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes, sir. I'd like to say that City of Faith today did a huge tornado relief outreach, and we had a lot of good donations. A lot of people came by, a lot of needs were met, a lot of people were blessed. But we have a ton of boxes left. So I need y'all to get the word out that if anybody needs boxes, because I know a lot of people are struggling trying to salvage what they can from their homes that are blown away. And the Arkansas Box Company from Conway brought an 18-wheeler today and unloaded flats of boxes at our parking lot, which we were able to take a lot of them over to the fire station in Southwest Little Rock. But we still have quite a few, so they're open to anybody who needs them. If they want to come by, they can contact me or email me or however, or just stop by and pick them up. But they're there for the taking.
Thank you. City attorney comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, I'm happy to speak with any of the council members whenever you'd like. If anyone has questions about anything, or you want me to draft resolutions or proposed ordinances, that's part of my job. I do have an update about the eminent domain circuit court case. So I had filed our complaint at the beginning of January. We have it served on the defendants. They've appeared through an attorney. Their attorney had filed a motion to dismiss. I filed a response to that earlier in March. Shortly before the hearing that the judge had set, the defendant's attorney called me and said he was withdrawing his motion to dismiss. So we didn't have a hearing in front of the judge, and the case will proceed.
Thank you, sir. It's how you know you drafted a really good response to a motion to dismiss, is when the other side's like, we don't need to go to court to hear it, I'll just withdraw it. City clerk comments?
No comments.
With that, there's no further business. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Got a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes. Yes. All opposed, no. Motion carries. We're adjourned.